me running some sort of workshop. So I finally put it together. So the key points of this particular workshop is focusing on numerology and all the different card meanings. But I wanted to narrow it down to like kind of like the key points, because when I was learning how to read, I was really frustrated that none of the books that I had purchased had like put any of these things together. So it's really hard when you're trying to learn 78 different cards at once, because it's its own language in a way, to kind of get that going. So, okay. And then, so we're gonna begin with this video, and it just talks about like the origin of the tarot. So a lot of people ask me like the beginning of where the cards came from, and there's a lot of different stories, and I feel like the best one is actually this, this video by Gaia. So just click on it.
Last year, I purchased my first tarot deck, and as someone who gets anxiety when it comes to making decisions, I found the endless options of decks to be overwhelming. I mean, there's a deck in almost every theme imaginable. How could I know if the Pagan Cats deck was as legitimate as the classic Marseille deck? And anyway, was the Marseille deck even the original? I wanted to know more about the history, and I found that the narratives surrounding tarot's origins are many. The stories range from gypsies to ancient mythology, and often contradicted each other. To get a better understanding, I turned to occult historian and author Mitch Horowitz.
The earliest decks that we know of showed up in the early 15th century in northern Italy. And they were treated as a game. And we know this because there are manuscripts, catalogs, diaries that refer to this early card game with these trump images, images of hope, images of the empress, images of death, images of the fool, things that we come to associate with tarot cards today. In its earliest iteration, tarot was an ancestor to our modern game of bridge.
So the origin story wasn't exactly as exciting as what I was expecting. What I thought would be an ancient tale of ageless wisdom actually turned out to have started as a parlor game.
What people fail to understand is that games, passion plays, art, stained glass windows, and other imagery were serious business during the Renaissance. When someone spoke of a game during the Renaissance, they didn't mean it like we mean Monopoly or Twister today. Then tarot traveled to southern France, and people in southern France who were more interested in the early Renaissance in revived Egyptian philosophy and in ancient Hermetic philosophy began to imbue the deck with certain images of their own, or began to change certain images and their meanings. But the idea was that these were communicating some sort of inner or spiritual development.
By the early 1500s, Marseille had become the center of tarot production, and over the next few centuries, the ancient and mystical narratives surrounding tarot became solidified in the public mind, as various occultists and authors developed theories linking the deck and its images to ancient symbolism, often without any historical evidence. One of these occultists was Eliphas Levi. In 1854, he published a book called The Doctrine and Ritual of High Magic.
And in that book, for the very first time, this being the mid-19th century, he began to associate tarot with the letters of the Hebrew alphabet, with Kabbalah, with planets, with elements, with zodiac signs. So people walk around today with this notion that tarot is an ancient Egyptian mystery book that always had these correspondences to the elements, to the celestial bodies, various alchemical symbols, to the Hebrew alphabet, to the tree of life in Kabbalah. This was a mid-19th century invention. It doesn't mean there's not profundity to it, and it doesn't mean there aren't insights to it. Traditions have to start somewhere. They don't just fall from the sky. And that tradition, to a very great extent, started with Eliphas Levi in the mid-19th century.
I was beginning to understand how the decks became associated with so many mystical schools of thought. As a self-aware species, we constantly try to define our existence, and this often means prescribing deeper meaning to things in order to understand ourselves. But I was so curious how the cards began to be used as a means of fortune-telling and divination.
It's impossible to understand tarot without grasping that there is a mystical allegory in the cards. The images that appear in the tarot deck can readily be called archetypes. They're images that have existed from our earliest recorded history of sorcerers and hermits and magicians and devils. All of these images have a heroic or frightening quality, a mysterious quality. They are primeval images. They are images not unlike some of the earliest human paintings that you'll find on cave walls, for example.
Any tarot deck that you purchase today will be made up of 78 cards. This includes 56 minor trumps, or the minor arcana. It's made up of some variation of 4 suits: wands, cups, swords, and coins. Each of these suits are numbered 8 through 10 and also include 4 court cards: a king, a queen, a knight, and a page. But the major trumps, or major arcana, are what really make the deck. It's made up of 22 allegorical images that many associate with the human journey. Taking a look at the same major trump from several different decks, you'll notice the richness and detail that each individual card takes on. Even the minor trumps contain vibrant and suggestive images, but it wasn't always this way. British occultist Arthur Edward Waite rejected the unverified connections of tarot to things like ancient Egypt, astrology, and Kabbalah, but he recognized the mystical allegory in the cards and the powerful occult properties of the images. So in the early 20th century, he collaborated with artist Pamela Colman Smith to create the most recognized deck in the English-speaking world today, the Rider-Waite-Smith deck.
It was the very first time that a deck was produced that was not only used expressly for fortune telling, but in which all of the minor trump cards, all of the court cards, had these very alluring illustrations. It opened up the cards to almost this democratic occult renaissance, where suddenly cards that had been very difficult to decipher previously seemed imbued with meaning. This is a replica of an early tarot of Marseille. Here is what a court card might have looked like. This is, say, the 9 of Cups. As you can see, there's no illustrations whatsoever. When you're trying to fortune tell, and you pull a card like that, unless you have a very deep intuition for what's going on, it's very difficult from these sparsely illustrated court cards or minor trumps to make a judgment call. So it was really, the Smith images that opened up tarot to divination for every man and woman, the everyday person. And today, again, almost every deck that we have, whether it's theme, whether it's vampires, whether it's Star Wars, whether it's Druidic, whatever contemporary theme people are working with, remade for the 21st century, they are almost always riffing off of the images of Pamela Colman Smith. So we all fight about the history of tarot, but the truth is there is a diplomatic and authentic whole where everybody has a little piece of the truth. These are archetypal images. They do tell stories. People feel that there is meaning in these frozen moments of time, at least a snapshot or a reflection of the immediate present, if not the future. And the methodology is very easy. So this tool has surpassed everything else from the occult culture, whether it be Ouija boards, maybe even daily horoscopes, as the divinatory tool of choice. It's the ultimate democratic tool of the occult.
So the idea that tarot is a book of ancient mysticism and ageless wisdom may not be backed by evidence, but it doesn't necessarily make the application of those ideas to those who practice it any less valid. When it came to choosing my deck, I took the advice from a friend and picked the one whose illustrations resonated with me the most. Because even though each deck reflects the beliefs of the artist who illustrated it, it's really the reader who will give the final meaning by their personal interpretation of the cards.
Okay, so that's the reason why I picked the Rider-Waite cards, is that the minor arcana are illustrated, so when you're learning, it's easier to kind of like use the iconography to figure out what the cards mean. I also brought the original tarot deck. So if you guys want to flip through it and look at the differences, you could totally do that later at the end of the class. All right. So the first thing that I'm going to talk about is the suits. So if you notice, like when you were watching the video, that there's the cups, the wands, the swords, and the pentacles, and they all have different meanings. So with the numbers kind of have similar meanings, and the suits also have similar meanings as well. So the cups usually mean like emotions, creativity, intuition, and relationships. So when that pops up, you have like, you know, a bunch of cards that are cups. You know that the person or you are feeling a lot of emotions, or you're thinking about relationships. When you get a bunch of wands that pop up, you know that it's about inspiration, energy, passion, and enthusiasm. A lot of artists typically get a lot of wand cards. Swords deal with logic and air. So anytime it shows up, you know, people usually freak out because the swords usually come with like negative connotations. But honestly, it's just about like having good communication, or, you know, what is honest or what is true, because the swords usually cut through a lot of crap. And then the last one is the pentacles, and the pentacles usually deal with earth in some manner. So finances or money. Usually when pentacles come up, people are worried about their job, or they're concerned with like, you know, how they're gonna pay their bills this month or something like that. So to the next slide. All right, so I made a little cheat sheet in the first page of the book. I know that like maybe some of the stuff that I'm talking about might be a little confusing, so if you're learning how to read, this is just like a really quick page that you can go to just to have like quick card meetings. All right, so go to the next one. And on the right side, it's got like all of the cards lined up as well, so if you want to see them in order chronologically, it goes with the story of the Fool, it kind of goes with it. All right, so click the X in the corner. Yeah, and then scroll down. And then we're gonna go to this next film. So this one goes over the Fool's journey. So this is all of the tarot cards for the majors in this particular film. So this is a really quick one to explain that.
The major arcana are so named because they represent the arcane or secret principles of life. In the Enchanted Tarot, these universal experiences are represented by archetypal figures. They appear in varying forms in all cultures, both ancient and modern. In the tarot, each figure depends on the one that precedes it. This progression is really a journey, one taken by each soul in search of self-knowledge. It is, in truth, a cycle which can occur many times within one's life, so that every end is really a beginning. We begin each journey of self-discovery as the Fool. This traveler, our deeper self, embodies both our male and female sides. In complete innocence, the Fool can explore the limitless possibilities within each moment. Eagerly, the Fool tosses his pouch onto his back and leaps onto the road of life. His first encounter is with the Magician, master over the four elements of the physical world: fire, air, water, and earth. He fills the traveler's pouch with something of value: the Fool's first awareness of power. Back to back with the Magician stands the High Priestess, who wields powers beyond that of the visible world. Hers is the etheric realm of inner and outer space. She offers the Fool awareness of the connectedness of all things, and sends him forth to meet the Empress, who graciously greets him and places the gift of creativity in his bag. She is the life-giving, life-renewing impulse, the Earth Mother, who blends the elemental powers of the Magician with the intuitive ways of the High Priestess. She introduces the Fool to her consort, the Emperor, who commands the four corners of the Earth Kingdom she brings into being. He shares with our traveler the principle of order, the skill to structure and shape his own life, as well as influence the lives of others. The Fool accepts the gift, but immediately comes face to face with the Hierophant, who claims moral authority above the Emperor. Although just a man, he aspires to give structure to the realm of spirit and places the gift of tradition in the magic pouch. The problem of being just a man, or a just man, is encountered upon entering the realm of the lovers. Here one is faced with the eternal dilemma of whether to make choices based on desire or on the dictates of society. Are our hearts clouded or pure? The lovers give him a bittersweet offering for his pouch. The fool escapes from the lover's dilemma in the chariot. Decisive action carries our hero forward as he fills his pouch with determination. He realizes that he alone must take control. Now he faces the greater challenges of the psychic plane. His next encounter is with a beautiful maiden. A lion rests at her feet. Her gift of strength carries with it the underappreciated power of gentleness. Our soul traveler is in a quiet mood when he meets the hermit, walking a path he has followed since passing his own test of strength. He gives the fool the power to identify and follow a true path. The wise hermit can give the impression that the path is sure, but the wheel of fortune teaches that change is the only constant companion on the spirit journey. Turning always, the wheel brings fortunes both good and bad. Sometimes neither wisdom nor strength will enable us to escape the fate we have created for ourselves. The welcome face of the angel of justice appears just as our hero is down on his luck. Her balance returns him to his center. The fool falls asleep in her arms, the scales of justice sliding into his pouch. When he awakens, he looks up to see a man, hanging by one ankle, who seems strangely content. The fool rubs his eyes and looks again, because the man reminds him so much of himself. What is he awaiting? And why does he seem to enjoy being suspended? What does he see from that perspective? The fool decides to see for himself. As he hangs upside down, his pouch feels lighter and he realizes it is empty, as all the gifts he has received have become part of him. Unencumbered, he realizes that he too needs emptying. He lets go. Death is not what you believe. It is not to be feared. It is not an end, but a profound change. The fool crawls into his magic pouch to wait. Death reveals mysteries of life that the other gifts cannot. Emerging from the magic bag, he looks different, altered. The angel of temperance stops to give him a drink. When he eagerly asks what it is, she offers to teach him how to perfectly combine the ingredients. If he learns well, he will receive a rare gift, that of the art of patience and practice. He will need her powerful elixir in his pouch, for the host of our next stop on the journey is the devil. The devil can twist the words of all the lessons we have learned and trick us into believing that they are lies. He really wants to rob the fool of his treasures. Our hero knows he must first subdue the devil before he can move on. In the ensuing struggle, secure structures are destroyed. The explosive demise of the tower signals a life-changing event. The outer world is shattered. Dazed, our hero walks away from the rubble, ready to restructure his whole nature. He falls asleep in a grassy field, and when he awakens it is night. As he gazes up, the star above twinkles brightly, offering healing after the upheaval. In this calm after the storm comes a sense of peace never before known. As he sees with his third eye for the first time, the fool discovers the star's true meaning, the unity of opposites. But the star is blazing too hot and burns out. Suddenly lost in darkness and afraid of the light he has just experienced, our hero sits paralyzed. Slowly he is able to see again. The moon now shines softly at his feet. She represents the bright heart of compassion and will guide him to his higher self, even through the pitch black that comes just before the dawn. He gathers her moonbeams in his pouch. By morning, the star's light reappears and rises high in the sky, rekindled and reborn into a finer radiance. Here all the fool's new treasures have become part of his radiance. There is a strong pull to linger in the sun's joy and vitality. But when our hero meets the angel of judgment, he recognizes a final call to purify the self. The fool places the pouch at his feet and steps neatly out of time and into the world. The old cycle has ended, and a new one begins at the next turn of the spiral. We must leave the soul traveler at this threshold and bid him farewell.
Okay, so everybody is the Fool. The Fool is the 0 card, and typically when you think of the Fool's journey, everybody starts their life, you know, like at 20 at the beginning, you know, and they meet all these different people that eventually like help evolve you. So the Fool is always the 0 card because of that. It doesn't have, usually it's a neutral gender representation, but it's supposed to be everybody. Yeah, so when we're talking about numerology within the deck, there's 22 cards with the major arcana. So actually what I decided to do was to take the Fool and the World card out, because the Fool, the Fool is the absolute 0. It's all beginnings and potentials for things. And the World card is all kinds of endings. Usually like some sort of finality in like some positive way, like the last episode of a series or a graduation or, you know, maybe even a funeral or something, but usually it's an accumulation of things that come to an end. And in the representation, the Fool is kind of like the seed or the spark or something that starts. And then in the World card, all of the elements come back to fruition. And in some ways, like, they can say that the World card looks kind of vaginal in a way, and the Fool card is kind of like a dick. So if you put the two together, it's like creation of life in some way. But anyway, so moving on to the next slide. A little bit, I don't know. All right. Yeah, and then just click it. So I got the numbers of like all of these together with Jodorowsky's Book of the Tarot. So in this type of situation, I put all of the minor arcana together so that you can see it, and then I also coupled it with the major arcana that go together with the number 1. So the overall theme of the 1 is like beginnings, aces. There's opportunities for new things to happen, new beginnings and potential. So I wanted to ask, so every time we go through a slide, I just wanted to ask like, what it is that you feel off of these images. What do you think is something that's similar off of these images as a class? Like if you feel anything from it yet. And then also if you notice with the Magician, all of the elements are in the photo. So with the 1, with the beginning, he's creating, right? So there's the cups, the pentacles, the wands, and all the things. And then also with all the aces, we have all of the elements put together. And strength kind of follows through with that as well. But sometimes with the aces, it's pretty easy. I mean, it's just like, it's an opportunity. In the iconography with all of this is supposed to be like the hands of fate or the hands of God is like presenting something to you. Like with the coin, it could be a job out of nowhere or somebody that wants you to work a gig when you weren't expecting it or something like that. Or a cup could be like, oh my God, I met this hot honey at a club. Oh my God, I've never talked to them before. Like, who is this? It's a gift.
Yeah, so they don't have like a hand in it like
yeah, it's like, it's a brand new beginning. It's exciting. So we're gonna move on to the next slide. And I'm not gonna go over all the information. It's in the booklet. So if you wanna sit down and check it out, that's totally it. All right, so the number 2s are usually about partnerships in some way. So in this one, the High Priestess is coupled with it because of the duality. A lot of times the 2s come with like a decision or a choice to be made. So we have balance, partnerships, duality. The second row is always like in this booklet about, you know, the warning signs of the number 2. So like we were talking about before, like if you're doing a reading for yourself or for other people, and you get like a bunch of 2s in the deck, then you know that the number 2 is going to be very important. So it makes it easier to kind of understand like the flavor of the reading. So in this one, I was going to ask you guys, like I asked before, do any of the cards kind of speak out to you? Like, do you get any sort of like emotive feeling about any of the cards that are up here?
The swords.
The swords.
The swords sort of stand out because it is like definitely like a fork in the road. Like,
Yes.
Yeah.
It kind of, there's a lot of cards that mirror each other, and in this one it kind of mirrors the Justice card that we'll talk about later. But we're talking about 2s with a choice, and usually with the swords it's like having to make a logical choice with something. The 2 of Cups is like, you know, I'm sharing my love with somebody, and so it might be something new where it's like, I'm not thinking as an independent person anymore, I'm thinking as a couple. You know, things like that. But all of them kind of share the element of the nature of their suit. So we can move on to the next one. So this is the 3s. And the 3s are usually about like culminating and coming back together and learning about how to grow within like a group. So you take it to like level 2, the 3s are kind of like, how do we evolve? Like how, like it can be about like, you know, I have a friend of mine that likes to play. How do we get like more people involved to make this a bigger event? Or I'm dating somebody, I want to open this up to maybe a third party or something like that. So usually the 3s are like expansion in some way. So we have creativity, groups, growth, and then of course the danger of it. So if you get too many cards of the 3, there's like warnings that go along with that as well. So the Empress is usually seen as like utmost abundance, so it makes sense to go along with the 3. And then Death in some way goes along with the 3 of Swords because it's about clearing or making enough space to have something new happen. So again, like, is there any cards in this particular set that really draws out to you, or that you would want me to explain a little bit more? The 3 of Wands. Okay, so the 3 of Wands is like kind of sitting on like a hillside and being like, where do I take like my energies or my enterprise to the next level? It's more of a logical thinking, I think, for usually the Wands. But in that situation, it's also about expansion. It's just an expansion of energy. Like the 3 of Cups is about like expansion of love or compassion. So it's different in that way. And so the 3 of Swords usually comes up when you have to give away this level of sorrow. You know, like in relationships when you have like a breakup or something like that happens. So we can move on to the next slide. Okay, so the main theme of 4s is stability. So in this particular one, in some way it's usually about rest or taking a pause or reevaluating a lot of things. So structure, stability, manifestation are the main themes of this particular thing. And the warning of the 4, even though it's really great, is that you might not take any chances. So you might just end up being really comfortable for way too long. So in a relationship reading, it could be like, you might not be particularly happy with a relationship, but you might be sitting there and being in a relationship forever. Or you might be at a particular job that you don't like, and you might be there until like the end of time because it just feels comfortable to be there. It's what you know, right? So the Emperor is like the utmost level of authority. So that's another thing that also comes up with the 4s is like authority and like kind of father figures and things like that because it's about structure. Temperance is also about structure in some way because it's about creating balance so that you can make things happen. Once again, so if anybody has any questions about these particular cards or feels like some sort of emotional connection to something with the cards, let me know, and I can explain that a little bit. The Four of Swords is about needing rest. I feel like always when it comes up to the suits, the swords are a little bit different than the rest of the cards because they're usually more somber. So they always look a little different. But that one's always like when you need to go to like the spa, or you need to have like a home day, or you know, you're like, I'm not gonna text any of my friends back because I just like, I need my space. Like I need my time. The Four of Cups is like, oh, there's some people that are chatting with me and like I like them, but nobody's really good enough to date me. Like that's kind of like the energy of the Four of Cups.
What about the Four of Pentacles?
The Four of Pentacles, so we were talking about stability. The Four of Pents is like, I don't want to spend any money. They're like, I'm sitting at home, I'm not going to the bar, I'm not spending my money anywhere, because I'm trying to hold on to everything. That's that energy. Yeah, he's like, this is my money. He's like, I got my paycheck, I'm holding on to it. All right, so the next slide. So the fives is when the cards kind of get into like a more, this is the most like tumultuous number. I always know that when I get a bunch of fives in a reading, that person's going through some serious shit.
Yeah.
So,
Is that the same way in numerology too?
yeah, a lot of numerology kind of repeats with like the tarot as well. So fives can be creative, but at the same time, it's kind of this like chaotic energy that creates it, if that makes sense.
So like if you're reading someone's deck, or if that's like your number, like what does that mean?
Well, if it's like your birth number or something, I think it just means that you have more of like creative energy or compassion or things like that. The tarot, I think, takes it a little bit to a darker place than I think that most numerology does. So I wouldn't freak out about it.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah.
Freak out just now.
like Allie's over there like, I don't know what I'm feeling about this. All right. So yeah, so with this particular one, the things that could happen that are negative associated with the number 5 could be lies, betrayal, swindler's promise. So the positive things that come with it are change, instability, and conflict. So the 5 of coins is typically like when you feel left out of a situation. The 5 of wands is when you don't feel like anybody's on your side, like everybody's arguing with you. The 5 of cups is like, nobody's like my former partners. No dude is ever gonna come up and be as good as the guy that like I'm in love with that's actually not real. You know, like that's the 5 of cups. The 5 of swords is like, I'll let you win this battle. It's some serious shit. Like when you work with somebody and they're arguing with you and you're like, that's fine. But yeah, 5s are always conflict in some way. And so it comes up with the devil as well and the Hierophant. So the Hierophant's like the holy man. Like he likes to like place roles and rules onto people, and the devil's like, I don't give a shit. Like, what do you want to do? You want to be bad? Be bad. Go do drugs. I don't care. Go have crazy sex. So anyways, we're going to move on to the next slide. I think everybody kind of gets the vibe of the 5. All right, and then the number 6, it's kind of like the 2s. It's about partnership and creativity again, but it's at a higher level. So when we go through the 1s through the 10s, it's kind of like continuing the story until you get to the 10 or the world card, and then it starts over again. So the 6 has like the lovers, and normally the number 6 is pretty joyous in general. So if you get any cards from this particular situation, you know that you're out of the clear. So if you were having like hell in some way, like your building was giving you a lot of crap, like your friend's health was really bad, or you had a bad month with your boyfriend or girlfriend, know that with the 6, everything's kind of like, you're done, you're out of the weeds. And the Tower is also about that. So like, the lovers are actually seen in the Tower. So in situations where, yeah, because it's like a man and a woman. So sometimes the lovers are based off of like things that can't happen in reality, like utmost level of love. It can't last without structure. So that's usually what comes up together. But in all of these other cards, it's usually about giving or understanding that relationships are important in some way. If anybody has any questions about any of the cards that they see, or they feel like any connection with any of them, let me know. Okay, so let's move on to the next one. And then we'll be done really soon, and it'll be like to reading cards again. Okay, so the number 7 is about productivity. So how hard are you working? Usually 6 is like a joyous reaction to things, like you celebrate because you had a really rough period. The 7's like, I gotta get back to work. I need to finish like what I've been putting my effort into. So the star comes up because it's like gives you hope in some way. Like sometimes there's like some essence of like, if you finish this or you complete this task, like you can move on to the next thing. A lot of times when I get the number 7 in like a reading or something like that, I know that they've been really working hard on something in particular. Another thing that comes up with the number 7 is whether or not it'll pay off. Because it's like spending all this time, like, you know, working overtime or something like that, and wondering if your employer notices. Or wondering if like all this time that you're putting into like a musical set is gonna pay off. Like, are people gonna love it? So the 7 of Cups is too many opportunities. So if anybody has any questions about this, let me know. One thing I did find out, I think from doing readings for so long, is that the 7 of Swords right there with the guy that's like trying to sneak out, I realized that sometimes that's a card about being untruthful, but sometimes it's about being untruthful with yourself, or being unaware of like the reasons or the actions of why you choose to do things. But sometimes people place it on somebody else. They'll be like, someone's not being honest with me. And you'll be like, no, it's you. You're not being honest with what you want. That's the truth. Okay, so we're gonna move on to the next card. I know, but are we doing okay on time? Like, girl, get off the stage. You need to go. Get up. All right, so the number 8. The number 8 is the next series after the 7. So 7 is all the hard work. 8 is when you're getting paid. 8 is like when you finally see like the attention or the work pay off. Like you get to go take the goddamn vacation that you want to take. Like the 8 of Cups, you're like, I had enough of this shit, I'm out. Yeah, but the 8 of coin, the coins are always going to be representational of something like of this earth, something physical that we're doing. And a lot of times when it comes to money and things like that, you'll see somebody working. So in this situation, it's like, motherfucker's about to go to market. Like he's gonna make some money. Like look at all these pentacles he made. That's sick. You know? look at that. Dang.
I was wondering, like, can anybody have like a tarot card that is like their tarot card? Like,
Yes.
Is that something that just keeps coming up in a deck, or is it really into numerology? Like, how does
Okay, so there are cards related to people's birthdays, and there's 78 cards. I know that that's like set up a certain way. I think it's by like weeks though. So if you're born to a certain week, you get like assigned a particular card for you. And then majors are, I think, assigned to like astrological signs and stuff like that too.
Okay.
Yeah, but some people like, God, like every time you pull a card and you're like, I know that this motherfucking card is about you because you keep on pulling the Queen of Swords and it's not about anybody else, it's about you, right? So then you know that that meaning is something that they need to pick up. But, so in this one, yeah, the 8, the other thing that comes up with the 8 is like when you reach like a high level of working really hard, you can either make that money or you have to drop everything. So the Justice card comes up when relationships or a job isn't working, like you just feel completely exhausted and it's like at a point that you just have to cut off that weight or that energy. You have to get it back. The Moon is also talking about maybe delusions, like maybe I've been working too hard at something and this isn't real. So both of those kind of go together in that. The Eight of Swords is about feeling trapped in a situation. Like sometimes that happens when you've been working like way too hard. So I think that's about it. We can move to the next one. All right, and then the number 9 is a really joyous number. So 6 is a really great, and number 9 is awesome as well. So 9 usually comes up when someone is like kind of like at their peak. Like they're making the most money at their job. Like usually 9s also come up as a very independent number as well. So it's usually like, I feel like I'm really running shit right now. Like that's kind of the energy. Like I'm really strong and like I don't really need anybody else. I got this. Because 9s are right before the 10, which is completion. So it always feels good when you're like right about to be at the climax of something. Like you're like, I'm gonna have the biggest show. You know what I mean? Like we already know that it's gonna be fucking awesome. So in this one, the sun kind of comes up with that type of emotion. So the sun is always really joyous. Whenever you get that card, the 9 of coin is also really joyous. It's like somebody that's like we were talking about, like she makes her own money. She uses her money to like take care of herself, right? Like she gets her hair and her nails done. Like she doesn't really care. She's about her. But then we have these other cards, like the wands in the situation, the swords, and the hermit are kind of not the same story. And I think this is like where it starts to kind of deviate. The wands are about feeling defensive because you feel like you've worked so hard and suddenly people are up in your space about your experiences or something like that. The 9 of swords is like feeling like depression or anxiety, like you haven't done enough work or things are gonna go to hell if you don't like concentrate on it. The same with the hermit, like maybe it's time to put this energy back into yourself. The number 9 can be a very selfish number, usually when it comes up. But because it's right before the 10, it's fruition, attainment, fulfillment, and yeah, so the number 9, the downfall of it, it might be some self-centeredness that kind of comes up with the card. That's the downfall of it. Okay, we can move to the next slide. Okay, so the number 10, like the world card that we talked about, this is like ultimate completion. So when it comes up, you know that it's the end of a cycle, a renewal period. The Wheel of Fortune and Judgment are the major arcana for this particular set. And the Wheel of Fortune, like the world card, has all of the elements of the cards in it, astrologically. So we got like Virgo, Taurus, or not Virgo, I don't know, there might be Aquarius, I don't know. It's like Scorpio, yeah. So all the energy of the deck is in that, and it comes up as the number 10 as well. So it's like completion or finish. The wheel or the circle is like cyclical in motion. So it always comes back around. The Judgment card is always about things coming back up. So something that you feel like you had finished, suddenly it's back up for you to like kind of deal with again. And then once again, like the 9s, we have 2 cards that are really joyous, and we have 2 cards that are hard. So can you guys pick out which ones are the joyous cards and which ones are terrible?
That rainbow is trash.
It was poorly designed.
For real, the swords look sad.
Yeah, it's rough.
That situation
It's rough.
Sure. My back hurts.
You're cracking me up. So if there's anything that you want to know about any of these particular cards in this, or why it's setting up like that, let me know.
Yeah, I mean both the wands and the sword, because this would be the most painful of all of them.
Yeah. So the 10 of, we're talking about completion. So the 10 of Wands is like, I took on way too much. I feel exhausted. This is way too much. The 10 of Swords is like, I killed myself. Like I went too deep. Like I'm done. Yeah. No, because I think they're saying like with the swords, it's like he did it himself or something, like he laid back on it or something like that.
He fell on his sword.
He fell on his swords.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. Poor guy. And then the Ten of Cups and the Ten of Pentacles are about using the rewards and the money or the status that you have to create a community. So the Ten of Pence is usually like when you have like all of your family come together and you're like, oh my God, like we are so strong as like a group of people. Like there's so much support and so much love here. This is fantastic. And then the Ten of Cups is kind of the same thing, but on a smaller level. Like that's when somebody reaches like, you know, an amazing point in their relationship where they're maybe thinking about getting married or, you know, like, you know, having like the 2 kids and like the house and like enjoying the rainbow, you know. It's kind of that type of energy. So if anybody has anything else, we're gonna move on to the next. Okay. Okay, so I'm not going to spend too much time on the court cards in this, but I felt like it needed to be explained because we were doing everything else. So in this one, the court cards usually show up as individual people, and they have a lot of different expressions or emotions for each of them. You can check in your booklet and read up on that if you want to. But it more so than like the major arcana or anything like that. When you start getting a bunch of suits like this, you know it's about people. So we're going to move on to the next slide. So we're going to start with the page. So the story of like the page to the king is that the page is learning how to do its particular suit. And like the aces, we're talking about new opportunities again. But in this situation, it's about people. So somebody is giving you like an offering of love with the cups. Like, oh my God, I want to tell you like how beautiful you are or something. Like, it's like that. And then, you know, the staffs or something like, have you ever thought about working on a creative project with me? So they're people, but usually the knaves are like, they don't know what the hell they're doing. They're just like, girl, I want to try. Like, can I just text you? It's that kind of energy, but it's still like an opportunity. Like they're always, the knaves are always presenting. Like they're like, do you see this love I have for you? It's always really cute, but always like baby, like, you know, like that kind of energy. So we're gonna move on to the next one. They're usually represented by younger people as well. So sometimes they can be children, but they're usually like adolescents and things like that. The knights are the next people. And the other thing that comes up with the knights is because they're all on horseback, it's like immediate action. So it's talking about movement in some way. So maybe the energy of the other one is like, I've had a crush on you since the dawn of time, but I don't know how to talk to you. The knight's like, I'm in your inbox every night. Like, I'm in your face, like, I'm letting you know how much I love you. But the knights can be kind of aggressive about it, and so those are those type of people. So, and then also you can tell by the way that the horses and like the way that the movement of the knights are, the nature of those people. So the slowest one is actually the pentacles. And usually when knights come up, you can kind of dictate how long an event will happen. So like with the pentacles, you know that it might take a couple months for somebody to come around. Whereas the Knight of Swords, because they're moving so fast, or the Knight of Wands, it might happen tomorrow. You know what I mean? Like, he's there. The Knight of, like, in the same thing that we were talking about with the suits, right? So cups usually mean emotions or love. Wands are usually about creative ambitions, but also fuckboyery. Swords are usually about ideas and things like that. And then pentacles, again, about work or jobs or something like that related to physical things. And we'll move on to the next one. Okay, so queens, queens are the next level, and these are people that are really receptive to people. They're people that really want to show like your support, and they have a lot of empathy, and they have a lot of compassion and a lot of feelings. And typically in a reading, when you have like a woman, like if I'm reading for somebody that's a female, they might show up as a queen card. Because usually, we were talking about how these suits usually show up as different people. So in this particular one, the Queen of Cups will be somebody that'll be very empathetic.